After massive Iranian missile strikes on Israel, the situation in the region changed within minutes. The United States military quickly responded by raising combat alerts across all branches of the armed forces. From Air Force bases to Marine Corps installations, the same message was transmitted through secure communication networks: prepare for immediate combat readiness. The alert triggered a chain reaction across multiple military bases. Personnel who had been going about their normal duties suddenly shifted into emergency deployment mode. Sirens sounded across certain installations.
Sirens active. Mobilize all units. Report status to command.
Forklifts and flatbed carts loaded with essential military equipment. Portable generators, ammunition crates, communication systems, medical kits, and field supplies were carefully moved into the cargo hold. Every item was strapped securely into place using heavy-duty cargo restraints. This particular aircraft had a clear mission plan. Before heading overseas, it would first make a stop at another military base to collect additional personnel and equipment. Only then would it continue its long flight toward the Middle East, carrying a full load of troops and supplies. Across the base, the atmosphere had completely changed. What had started as a normal day had suddenly turned into a large-scale military deployment.
Move it! Load those pallets now! Roger, securing the load! Clear the ramp, jet incoming! Final checks. We move now.
Copy. Perimeter secure.
Load the gear. Double time.
Roger that. All teams, expedite loading. Wheels up in 30.
Copy, sir. Pallet secure. Boarding now. Copy. Turning left. Clear on the right.
Roger that, ground.
While the first aircraft was preparing for departure, similar activity was unfolding at nearby bases. Several additional C-17 transport aircraft were already positioned on their respective airfields, each one being loaded for the same mission. Cargo teams worked quickly but with careful precision. Armored vehicles were driven directly up the aircraft ramps and secured inside the cargo holds. Tactical buggies, armored transport trucks, MRAP vehicles, and other specialized military equipment were arranged in tight formations to maximize available space. Each aircraft represented an important piece of a much larger logistical operation. Every vehicle, crate, and pallet being loaded had been carefully selected to support combat operations once the forces arrived in the Middle East. Meanwhile, at a separate section of another base, maintenance crews were busy preparing fighter jets for the possibility of sustained combat operations. Rows of aircraft sat on the flight line as mechanics moved from one jet to the next, carrying toolkits and diagnostic equipment. Every fighter aircraft underwent a detailed inspection to ensure it could operate under the demanding conditions of combat. Avionics systems were powered up and tested. Radar arrays were checked for accuracy. Technicians carefully examined the aircraft's wiring and electronic components panel by panel to ensure there were no faults. Weapons crews soon arrived with loading equipment and began mounting missiles and guided bombs beneath the wings of the aircraft. Engine covers were removed so mechanics could inspect the air intakes and turbine blades. Fuel systems were checked and prepared for rapid refueling. These fighter jets would soon be responsible for flying repeated combat sorties, sometimes multiple missions within a single day. Because of that, every system had to be functioning perfectly. The preparation was slow, methodical, and extremely precise, because once the aircraft entered combat operations, there would be no margin for mechanical failure.
Back inside one of the large aircraft hangars, soldiers were preparing for deployment. Unlike routine training exercises, this mission carried an uncertain timeline. Rows of soldiers stood beside their gear as they carefully packed their duffel bags and rucksacks.
Mount up. Let's go.
Inside went extra uniforms, combat boots, protective equipment, hygiene kits, and personal items they might need during a long deployment. For many of them, this would not be a short rotation. They were being sent to a military base somewhere in the Middle East, and no one knew exactly how long they would remain there. Some soldiers spoke quietly with each other while checking their gear one last time. Others sat silently, mentally preparing for the mission ahead. Orders continued arriving through commanding officers, confirming transport assignments and aircraft schedules. As evening approached and the sun began to set, the final order came through the hangar: prepare for boarding. Immediately, the soldiers formed organized columns outside the building and began marching toward the waiting aircraft. The large transport planes were already lined
After many hours in the air, the transport aircraft began arriving at their destination in the Middle East. As soon as the planes landed, the unloading process began without delay. The rear ramps lowered and the hot desert air rushed into the cargo holds. Soldiers stepped down onto the tarmac and immediately began organizing their equipment. Vehicles that had been secured during the flight were quickly unchained and driven down the ramps. Forklifts moved in to remove large cargo pallets filled with ammunition, supplies, and field equipment. Everything moved quickly because the aircraft would not remain on the ground for long. Once unloaded, the same planes would soon take off again, flying back to the United States to collect more troops and equipment for additional deployment flights. For the soldiers who had just arrived, this military base was now their temporary home. They grabbed their gear and followed instructions from base personnel who directed them toward their assigned living quarters. Meanwhile, on the nearby airfield, maintenance crews were already preparing fighter aircraft for upcoming missions. Fuel trucks moved from jet to jet, pumping JP-8 aviation fuel into the aircraft tanks. Weapons teams rolled in carts loaded with missiles and guided bombs. Using mechanical hoists, they carefully mounted each weapon onto the aircraft pylons beneath the wings. Technicians connected the weapons to the aircraft's electronic systems and inserted safety pins with bright red flags attached. These
Avionics
pins would
powered
remain in
up.
place until the aircraft was
Radar
ready to
arrays
taxi
nominal.
for takeoff.
Wiring checks out. All
Each
systems
jet
green.
underwent a final series of inspections:
Engine 2 needs
fuel
realignment
levels,
now.
flight
On
controls,
it. Running full
avionics systems,
diagnostics. Make it
engines,
quick.
and
We deploy
weapons
at
mounting
dawn.
points.
Every
By the time
system
the
had to be
pilots arrived for
functioning
their mission
perfectly.
briefing, every
Final
aircraft
checks
waiting
complete.
on that ramp
Ready
was
for
fully
launch.
fueled, fully armed, and completely prepared for combat operations. The buildup had begun, and more aircraft were already on their way.